Good morning, Tuesday, March 14th, 2023. I'm looking at old school baseball players versus new school baseball players. Doing a series of videos looking at the stats and the accomplishments, trying to figure out who is better, which era. The first 75 years covers 1870s through 1949, and then the second 75 years, 1950 to 2022. This video, pitching innings. Who pitched more innings? The old school era or the new school era? Let's look at the stats. I did the research, wrote the book, so it's not my opinion, it's my analysis. 1870s. You take a 10-year period and you average it out. Who had the most pitching innings in a certain year? Take 10 years, average it out. The average for the 1870s, 443 innings a year. Who had the most? Al Spalding had 617 innings pitched. It's unheard of, right? 1870s. Whew. 1880s. The average was 565 innings. Who had the most? Charlie Radburn, 679 innings pitched. 1890s. The average, 445 innings. Who had the most? Amos Rusi, 549. 1900s, the average, it's coming down, 394 innings. Remember that the high was 565. So in the 1900s, 394. Who had the high? Nope. Ed Walsh, 464 innings. 1910s, the average, 362 innings. Who had the high in the 1910s? Pete Alexander, 388 innings. 1920s, the average, 317 innings. Who had the high? Pete Alexander, 363 innings. 1930s, the average, 299. Who had the most innings pitched in the 1930s in a season? Dizzy Dean, 325. And 1940s, the average is 269, comes way down. So as the years went on, the pitching innings went down. Who had the most? Bob Feller, 343 in the 1940s. So the aggregate pitching innings for the first 75 years, the average, 386 innings pitched in a season. Let's look at new school, 1950s. Pitching innings, 309 innings. And the most, Robin Roberts, 347. 1960s, the average, 312. And the most, Sandy Koufax, 336. 1970s, the average, 333. And who had the most? Steve Carlton, 346. 1980s, the average, 266. And who had the most there? Steve Carlton again, 304. 1990s, the average, 250. And the most innings pitched in the 1990s in a season belongs to Randy Johnson, 272. 2000s, the average pitching innings, 224. Way down, right? And who had the most in the 2000s? Roy Halladay, 266. So the aggregate pitching innings for the second 75 years, 232 innings. And what did I say the old school was? 386. So in the old school baseball era, the pitchers dominated in innings pitched, starting with the 1870s, because they were unheard of. They were just, look at this, 1870s. Al Spalding, 404. Spalding, 497. Spalding, 617. Spalding, 571. John Ward, 587. It's ridiculous. And then in the 1880s, you had Charlie Radburn, 679. Pud Calvin, 656. John Clarkson, 623. John Ward, 595. So you see, in the early days, they were just pitching a lot of innings, individual pitchers. Whereas in the old school, 300, 400, 500, and 600 innings pitched. In the new school era, it was just basically 200, 250, 300 innings pitched. And you had a high, among the new schoolers, who had the most in the second 75-year period of baseball history? Who had the most innings pitched? I'm looking here. It looks like Steve Carlton, 346 in the second 75-year period. 346 is the most. Whereas in the old school era, the most belongs to Charlie Radburn, 679. I'm covering Hall of Fame players, remember. So far in my analysis, I have been covering offensive categories, and now I'm into pitching categories. The score after all this is old school 10 wins, new school 5. Next video will be games started by pitchers. Who wins that category? Old school or new school? Stay tuned. I'm out.